This morning I am going to use my dehydrated sweet potatoes to make some sweet potato pancakes. We really like them. We haven't had them in a while, and so I figured, well, this morning's the morning we're going to make some. So this is the way I do it, and I'm sure there's a lot of other ways, but I just thought I'd show you a quick way that you could use some of those dehydrated sweet potatoes. I just take, my recipe for pancakes calls for 1 cup of flour. So I reduced the cup of flour since I'm using powdered dehydrated sweet potatoes. I reduce it by about 1/4 cup, and this is just how I do it. Again, you can play with it and see how you like it best. So I put just probably less than 1/4 cup difference of sweet potatoes. The rest is just the regular unbleached flour down there, freshly ground, however you want to do it. And then it calls for 1 cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of oil, 1 egg, and an additional calls for 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1 tablespoon of sugar. And with the sweet potatoes in there, it's going to make it a little bit sweeter because, you know, sweet potatoes are sweet. That's the name. But anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and get this mixed together. And how I do it is I put all the dry ingredients in my bowl, and then I add the oil into my 1 cup, and then I add my egg in there because it calls for the egg to be slightly beaten. So I go ahead and I slightly beat it in the mixture, and then I add all the wet to the dry. So let's go ahead and do that. The flour and the sweet potatoes, and then our tablespoon of sugar, okay. And it says 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You know, that's not enough to really have to measure, so I'm just going to put some in there. And then the oil. Goes into the cup. That hopefully the oil goes into the cup there. And we'll put that on. And then 1 egg. And try not to make a mess the way I just did. And the eggshell, of course, goes to the compost, so I'll just set that aside. And then just go ahead and mix that egg in. And I've already got my frying pan over here with some oil in it, or lard, or whatever fat you like to use in your frying pan. Get my frying pan nice and hot because that's important, of course, when we're making pancakes. Okay, so I'm just stirring up my dry ingredients. Oh, and I almost forgot, we need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Almost forgot major. We were going to have some seriously flat pancakes here. Not a good thing. Okay, so good thing we saw that. 1 and 2. Okay. Go. And see, it already makes it a nice little different color. Now, I'm just going to pour this in. And remember, you can stir all you want when it's wet, but you never want to over-stir anything that has flowers in it. Flour in it once it's wet. Did I say that correctly? Stir it all you want when it's dry, but once you make flowers wet, you want to stir as little as possible. Otherwise, you get tough. It's just like dealing with a pie shell or anything else. once I have this all mixed, and like I said, I know I'm mixing even longer than I like. I'm going to let it sit. I'm going to let that baking powder activate, and I'm going to let those sweet potatoes rehydrate a little bit, and then I'll go ahead and start cooking. You can see all the little bubbles starting to form in there. The baking soda, or excuse me, baking powder is activating. And see how the batter has that nice, I don't know if you can kind of tell it here, has a nice orange kind of color. Let's see if I can turn on the light under here. Oh yeah. So let's hope these taste as good as they look. But there was some pieces that didn't completely 100% grind those sweet potatoes when I did them, because I use a little baby food, a little coffee grinder when I do it. But anyway, that's not a big deal. That actually makes like little sweet potato chunks in the batter, and they are oh so sweet and oh so good. So if you have some of those, don't worry, it still worked just fine. You will already know this, but this is just for some of the newer cooks out there just coming up. When you're making pancakes, the secret to a good pancake is to not flip it until you see the little bubbles come up on the side. You see the wet dough on. Then flip it. That'll give you, that's, you know, letting those air bubbles in there and give you a nice fluffy pancake. There you go. There's the first sweet potato pancake. Light and fluffy. And it'll be oh so sweet. So it's great. You can either, I do regular maple syrup with it, or you can do traditional sorghum syrup since it's sweet potato. Your choice.